Welcome to TVUG for September 2022. Tonight's session is Putting the Platform in Uno Platform. Our presenter is Steve Bilogan from Uno Platform. We're always looking for speakers for TVUG. If you'd like to do a presentation, please reach out to us at meetup.com/TechValleyNetUserGroup. TVUG is sponsored in part by the .NETFoundation.org. Looking for other user groups to attend? Please visit meetup.com/.net-virtual-user-group.
Okay, cool. So, hello, my name is Steve. I'm an engineer on the Uno platform team. And yeah, I want to talk to you today about basically all the developments that have been coming along with Uno platform since our 4.0 release, where we like to say, we're putting the platform part of Uno platform into play now, since we're going to build this. We're building an ecosystem for our developers to build their applications on top of us. So I'm going to go to, hopefully you can see my slides. Okay. So basically, just to get it started, if you haven't heard of Uno or if you need a refresher, basically Uno platform itself is the open source project which helps developers build single code-based C# and XAML applications for non-Windows platforms. And so with what we're achieving with that basically is, instead of us creating a whole new UI API or our own flavor of XAML or anything like that, basically what we're doing is we're taking what's already been built by Microsoft, which is the WinUI APIs and their XAML flavor, and we're stretching that across all these new platforms that it hasn't been built with in the past, right? And so we have, where is my, there we go. Okay. And so, yeah, so on the Windows side here, Uno just kind of like steps to the side, right? And then this is really the main core of Uno here, is sitting on top of those native stacks. So those, so sitting on top of UIKit or AppKit or the Android Views engine or, the web with WebAssembly. And we basically take that WinUI API layer and we plug it into whichever corresponding APIs are built in with the native SDKs below, right? And yes, we are sitting on top of .NET as it is now. So before, sitting on top of Xamarin, but now sitting on top of .NET. And basically what we're gonna focus a lot on right now, we'll talk a little bit about, how we're sitting on these native SDKs and how these work. But I really want to highlight basically all these basic environmental additions to the core product, right? So the toolkit, the Figma extensions, themes, all that fun stuff. But we'll just do a quick refresher slides on Uno itself. And so yeah, so with Uno, our goal basically is you are able to build pixel perfect applications by leveraging something called lookless controls or control templating, which I'll get into in a second. And one of the big use cases for this is that we want to be able to reuse existing C# and Windows XAML skills from these developers that are building these Windows XAML applications, and you're able to migrate, and it allows for opportunities for things like migrating maybe older enterprise applications to the web through WebAssembly, right? And to other non-Windows platforms. And so Uno, like I said before, it's built on top of .NET, and so it also takes advantage of the great Windows platform features that come with the WinUI API. So things like accessibility, touch input, keyboard focus, as well as being able to provide rich controls such as that are built into WinUI, such as the calendar or the grid, but also third-party controls like different types of charts from vendors like Infragistics or Syncfusion or the Windows Community Toolkit. These are all things that are compatible with Uno and will run on all those non-Windows platforms that we support, right? And so like I mentioned before, we actually are sitting on those native stacks, and we are utilizing the native platform SDKs, as well as being able to use, which I didn't mention before, as well as being able to use here Skia as an actual backend to target even more platforms, such as Linux or with WPF Windows 7 sort of magic that we get to do. And so Skia on its own, I won't jump into a whole thing about it, but Skia on its own is a 2D rendering library, and it's very good, right? So in that case, we can target even more platforms by actually rendering out the components and the views on a blank canvas, sort of like the Flutter style of things. So we kind of get the best of both worlds there, depending on which platforms you're looking for. And so those newest additions that I wanted to talk about going forward are, those extensions, the toolkits, the Figma plugin. Those are all as of Uno 4.0, which came out earlier this year. And so, like the title says, that we jokingly say that with 4.0, we have put the platform back, or platform in Uno platform, as we now provide basically not just the cross-platform UI or the multi-platform UI layer. We also provide a set of helpers and optional tools that can go beyond what we traditionally do by just providing that UI framework. And so, 2 more slides just on Uno stuff, and then we're going to jump into some code and some of the cool new stuff we have. But with Uno platform, we like to say it's what we call, it's truly universal, right? So what is meant by that is that WinUI itself, so the WinUI APIs, built by Microsoft and with their version of or flavor of XAML, we believe that is the best framework. We believe that is the best framework built from the ground up with responsiveness and adaptiveness in mind. And it means that by leveraging WinUI, you can have something working on small mobile devices all the way up to large 4K screens and everything in the middle. So those sets of APIs really are already built and tested and used for things like responsive design for different device form factors and all those things that we could take advantage of and apply to the other platforms, right? And so with Uno, what we're really doing is we're building this bridge for this WinUI technology, and we're going to bring it to all other platforms, basically. So making this API, this flavor of XAML, truly universal. And so the most important thing to us is that you should be able to have total control of how your app looks, even when you're using multi-platform framework libraries, right? And so I mentioned that a little bit with where we're hitting those native stacks, but we also have the 2D rendering capabilities and things like that. And so there are multiple strategies on the market right now that try to do this in different ways. And it's not like one's better than the other, right? But I just wanted to talk about some of those. So some of those, the 2 different sides to how you can really tackle this problem. So at one end of the spectrum, you have these people. You have people creating abstractions basically on top of the native platforms, and they let the native platform control do all the rendering without too much control over the way your views look. So yes, you're sitting on top. You have an abstraction layer on top of the Android views engine or the UI kit or app kit or whatever for iOS or Catalyst or Mac, and it kind of just lets those views do their thing. It just bubbles it up and it's displayed however the native SDK displays it. At the under end of that spectrum, on this canvas rendering side that we're looking at, you do have, what's happening is really you're basically slapping a canvas on the screen, you draw every single pixel yourself, and you lose some of those native behaviors that come with actual rich platform SDK controls themselves, right? So you may lose things like copy paste or localization or accessibility, things like that, that you get if you were to ask iOS or if you were to ask Android or whatever to give me your your true platform button that has all this built in, all this feature richness and integration into the system. You kind of lose that because you're just drawing something, right? And it has different visual states, but there's nothing really behind it, And so with Uno platform, what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit right in the middle of these 2 things. So basically, we want to sit, we do, like I mentioned before, we have that layer of abstraction that we sit on top of, obviously, and we do have, my laser pointer's in the way. Okay. And we do have those 2D drawing capabilities, but the really big heavy hitter that we get out of that we have as an advantage, I think, are these control templating capabilities or lookless controls. So basically what's happening right now with Uno is we have the WinUI APIs define a button, right? So you put a button in your XAML. We are actually, yes, going and we're taking the native platform SDK equivalent buttons or equivalent controls. So you get all that feature richness that comes with those built into the operating system that you're on. But we also have that control bubbles up to the surface with basically a blank canvas. And by defining different control templates that you could put for your styles of your application, you can draw that control however you'd like. You could make it look whatever you'd like it to look like by using these XAML primitives and painting the surfaces as you like. But it's still actually the native SDK controls that you're interacting with in the end, right? So it's like a little mini canvas that comes with each control that you can draw it however you'd like. And then obviously out of the box, Uno gives you a specific look and feel through its default control templates, right? And so enough talking about all this. I want to jump into some code and stuff. This is just a very, very simple example, but just to get it out there, this is sort of what we're talking about when we say that Uno has its own set of default looks for all of its controls, right? So it all comes looking like a Windows application. So it has that Fluent theme style to it. So you could see, just a simple text block with a slider. They all sort of look pretty similar, and these are all the platforms that it will be deployed to, and it will look and feel the same and act the same across all, right? And if we wanted to look sort of at that little simple example, we could jump into some code now. So I'm going to look at this, that basically the same exact example, but we'll jump into VS Code, which we do have support for. We have a plugin for VS Code, as well as our .NET new templates that you can roll up a new Uno application that is compatible with VS Code just from the command line, right? So if we, I knew that was going to happen. Okay, so basically, I want this to go away. Okay, so basically in VS Code right now, basically what I just did is I did a .NET new Uno app, and I just gave it the VS Code flag. So it comes with some nice built hooks and like a launch.json profile and everything that will work properly. And so right now we are running that application, the WebAssembly head for that application of this pretty much the same XAML that we were just looking at before, right? So we have our stack panel, we have our button, and we have a slider whose background is red, right? So then if we were to look on this side, here's my button, here's my slider, and it's red, and we're in the web browser right now doing this live. So it should, unless I kept this running too long and something timed out, but if we were then to just, save and set the background to blue, it auto reloads and we now have a blue background for the slider, right? We also have, I already left it here. So we also have, if I would like to add a click handler for the specific button, it's not on the right thing. I put the click handler on the button, reload. I put the background to red too again. We should now have a handler. And if I were to click that button, that debugger will launch straight into VS Code, and we could loop through and we could look at, all the good debugging goodness that you can inspect when you're ready to go. And so that's just an example of the code hot reload and the XAML hot reload working, and everything's there ready to go for your WebAssembly app, straight from VS Code. So I thought that was a fun little thing to look at. If we want to go back, okay. And so one of the things I do like to show is our Uno gallery. So basically, this is a application built with Uno to basically advertise or show all the different capabilities of Uno itself. Right, so it's theming capabilities, it's all those available things that are there, and so it runs natively on every platform, macOS, on the web, on Android and iOS. It's in the app stores if you want to go take it out for a spin and see what it's all about. And we can take a look Oh boy. Yes. Okay. So basically, this is the Uno gallery. So it's an Uno application running natively in the browser. What we're looking at right now is basically this is used a lot to show off our theming capabilities, right? So, like I mentioned, out of the box, you have buttons that will look sort of like this, depending on what style you're using. But coming out of the box, you have those native SDK buttons that are going to be created, and then that blank canvas on top that draws it in the Fluent style way of doing things. But because we're taking advantage of those control templatings, those look list controls, you can swap out canvases, or you can swap out how you're drawing the visuals of that control to be whatever you'd like, right? So then we have our material style, which is just a collection of different control templates and styles that can draw these buttons, still being the native buttons of whichever platform you're running on, but it can draw them in their different material style of way of doing it, following the Material 3 guidelines, Same goes for, text box as well. It has the nice animations and it has all this fun stuff. And if I were to go back to Fluent, these text boxes are still there, but now they're, they look like Windows text boxes. We could also show, so we'll jump ahead a bit, but one of the things that we're going to be looking at later on is the Uno toolkit, which provides sort of a set of higher complexity controls that you can just take and put into your app without having to reinvent the wheel every time. So it contains things like the tab bar, right? So depending on which style you're using, you can have a list of selectable tabs. It has all these different styles, and it deals with the the ripples and all that fun stuff. If we want to look at a full screen example, with the top tab bar that we can toggle around with. And the other thing that's fun to look at is basically this is for Cupertino only, but we do have a set of Cupertino styles as well. So actually, this is just a tab bar, but it's styled to look like a segmented control or segmented control from iOS, right? So, and it has those two capabilities of being a slider for the selected state, or just the normal Cupertino blue colors and stuff like that. So just a little thing of what basically the toolkit lives outside the gallery, but it's just a nice little section here where we could show all the toolkit controls that we have, and we'll jump back to that in a little bit with some code of how that actually how those work. So this I'm not going to spend too much time on, but basically the main concept or the main idea here is that Uno has been around for quite some time. It hasn't always been out in the open, right? So it's been something that's being built over time, and it's been used for many production applications, right? So it's out there in the world right now. We have some use case examples later on, but yeah, this was 2013. Around that 2013 area, the first inception of this was sort of thought up. By 2018, that's when WebAssembly was, it was becoming popular and was a thing. And so we had this, and I think it was like on the dev build floor for Microsoft Build that year. Mono had just been announced that it could be run in WebAssembly, and so we added support for it to Uno, saw if it would work, and we had a running, Uno application in the web browser that, it was a really cool thing to see. So, and it's just been a whirlwind since then, like more and more features, more and more things. Like we saw the material stuff that we just saw in gallery, infragistic support for third-party vendors for controls. And then we're just on and on and on. I'm actually missing, I think we have 4.4 right here, which isn't added. But basically here's where we are at this point is when we added those extensions, those toolkits, the VS Code extension we just looked at, and we're onwards. We're already at 4.5 releases for this year after 4.0. So there's lots more changes coming, and it's going to be really exciting. But before I get to the new stuff, so we like to say that Microsoft is actually Uno's largest code contributor, right? And that's because we do have a partnership with Microsoft and the Windows Platform Dev team, which basically they're with us on by trying to expand the overall reach of these APIs. And so we actually have access to the actual C++ code that WinUI runs on today for Windows, right? So we're then able to migrate the exact logic and behavior for these WinUI controls and replicate those for all other platforms, so they all act and behave the same way. They have the same performance improvements that Microsoft has been adding into these controls over time. And it allows for some really cool stuff to be brought over to all the other platforms. One of those being a date picker, right? So if we were to look back at that gallery, we can go to the. We can go. There you go. We can go. Yeah. So basically, this is that WinUI date picker, but running natively in the browser, right? So it has all those abilities to whatever, change the dates as you'd like. It does have more theming around. The shadow's a little funky here, but it does have more theming, so we can give it that sort of material lookish style. But the code that's actually running that date picker right now is the true code written by Microsoft, just now been ported over to run for WebAssembly, for Android, for iOS, for all those things, right? So yeah, so one of the biggest things is it's a lot of code to bring over, but it's great because we would never be able to replicate 100%, because before this you kind of just guess, right? Like you open up the date picker, you see how it behaves when you do certain things. Okay, like when you do this and this and this, it behaves in a certain way, so we have to code that. Now we just take it straight from the source, and it comes with a lot of UI tests, which is very good for us as well. So it's been a really, really beneficial partnership, and it's really exciting. And same goes for we worked a lot with different libraries and third-party vendors for controls like Infragistics and Fusion. The MVM toolkits, the WinUI community toolkits, the React UI or Prism. These are all .NET libraries or .NET libraries or frameworks or collections of controls or whatever, that they just work, right? Because if they were already targeting WinUI or UWP back in the day, they'll most likely work on Windows, because we are bringing those APIs over to all these other platforms, right? So it's pretty painless to bring these over if there's already some support for Windows in the beginning, right? And so we're going to get into the new stuff that came out with 4.0 and beyond. Themes is what we were just looking at before. Basically, was that collection of Fluent, Material, and Cupertino packages of styles. And so we have a V2 version of themes of Uno Material specifically. So now we have the ability for you to style your apps either with Material Design 2 or Material Design 3, or both. If for whatever reason you want to mix them both in your application, it still supports that. It provides a bunch of styles for all your different WinUI controls, as well as the toolkit controls that we'll look into in a bit. But those do have styling. Those do have material design styles available for them to be applied to. And this is our first step, basically, into this initial support for an upcoming, like a unified theming system, right? So we don't want you to have to say, okay, this is a material outline button style. We want to have a unified styling engine, or styling semantic naming, sort of a pattern. And you could just swap out if you want that to be a Fluent one, a Material one, or Cupertino one, and they all sort of speak the same language, and they'll just render differently based on those settings that you set, right? So that's going to be fun going in the future. A big thing we have to talk about, though, is extensions. So extensions are basically to help you bootstrap a new Uno application and get started with a proper architecture. We introduced these Uno extensions, right? So the idea is you shouldn't need to ever write code from scratch for commonly used functions, while retaining, or for commonly used functions like logging or knowing your localization, dependency injection, serialization, navigation, things like that, right? So those should all sort of be available for you to drop in and work with your application, right? All while retaining an option to easily extend any of these extensions themselves, right? To be customizable or swap out with something else that you've done yourself or you like something else better. It's very adaptable. Basically, this is coming from the Microsoft extensions sort of model, right? So Microsoft extracted a host of or a bunch of those capabilities, like in the host builder and stuff like that from ASP.NET, and it made them available through Microsoft extensions. So it covers hosting, logging, configuration, etc. And so in turn, the Uno platform extensions are based on those Microsoft extensions, right? And we'll jump into some code after I talk about this one. But this is one of the big ones. So one of our biggest extension sort of packages, I guess, is the navigation extension for Uno. So it provides a unified paradigm for all types of navigation, right? So frame-based navigation, displaying and navigating through modal pages, navigation that's triggered through selections of an item in a list or a view, pickers, returning data from navigation, dynamically adding views to different regions of your application, and more. So it's a full set of whatever you would want to do with navigation, it's able to do. And so this new navigation system is also fully declarative, right? And it can be used directly from XAML or from your view models. But the biggest thing that I think is really cool is what I just mentioned is the directly from XAML, right? So you can set your XAML up in such a way using this extension that the navigation extension will be able to parse your XAML or see how the XAML is built with these extensions and perform the proper navigations without you having to actually write the navigation, the navigation logic within your view model or code behind or whatever, right? And it supports all your favorite presentation patterns. It's not deterministic or prescriptive in any way of the architecture of your presentation framework, And so for a better detailed explanation of Uno navigation, it would be best to check out our YouTube channel, and I think on the blog too, but basically Nick Randolph, the creator of this, his speech or his session at UnoConf, this past UnoConf, will be a really, really, really good thing to look into because it's chock full of information and cool stuff to see, right? And so we can take a look at some of the code behind this or how this really works. If we were to look, so I'm going to give some context first. So we're going to be, where am I? Oh boy, example app. Okay, so the context, whatever. Okay, so the context here is basically we have this reference application that we have built to highlight, all the new stuff that's in 4.0 and beyond. So all the extensions, all that fun stuff. We have this reference application, which is just a small commerce application. You log in, you see a list of products, you add them to your cart, you have your details for your view, you have a settings page, just a basic application, but using all the things that we're talking about, right? So if we were going to look quickly, I want the deals. Yes, this one. So basically, we're going to look at the code for what's going on with this deals page, right? So in the deals page, you'll see that we have these top tab bars that I showed in the gallery, basically. So you have a top tab bar, so you can toggle between deals and favorites, right? And depending on which one, you have a different list that's going on the deals page. Obviously, you have a list of products. And then you have this bottom bar, so your bottom tab bar, which will be a higher level navigation component that, you can go away from deals to a search page, to the profile page, or to your cart, So there's basically, there's two levels of navigation happening right now, right? The tab bar, and then within the deals page itself, it has that sub navigation between, two different areas of deals, right? If we were to look at the code for that, so if I go to the code for this application, we can look. We can look here. So basically that top tab bar, the one that was at the top where you can do deals and favorites, That's basically our toolkit tab bar. So like we mentioned before, so it's just a control that you're allowed to, can style in different ways. In this case, it's styled in the material way. But the thing I want to talk about mostly is right now is this region name. Okay, so for each tab bar item, it is assigned a different region name. One is favorites tab, one is deals tabs, right? And this is coming from the Uno extensions navigation package. That's the namespace that we're talking about right here. And so if I were to look for deals tab in this page, the other place that has its region name set to deals tab is, don't worry about the feed view thing, we'll talk about it later, but is this control that houses that list of items that we looked at in the mock-ups there. So what's actually happening here is, if I were to shrink this, and if I were to shrink this, okay. So we have that top tab bar that had those regions of favorites and deals set in the XAML, and you can see here these two wrapping controls of something called feed view. Anyway, they have their regions set to the same names, right? So without anything in the code behind or your view models or whatever, the navigation extension is able to look for sibling elements, basically, that are sharing these region names, and it's able to infer, okay, you click the tab item with region name deals tab. Make sure that one is the one that becomes visible and navigate to it basically within the frame. And its sibling ones that have different region names not equal to deals tab, make those go away, make those invisible, right? So it's able to, yeah.
I got a question about this feature. Because it's very much like the Xamarin Forms shell in terms of being the navigation. Are there events that will let you, let's say they click on the favorites tab. Is there an event that would allow you to check some conditioning code that could possibly block the user from moving into that tab?
There most probably is. Actually, we can take a look at how this is set up, because like the shell, yes, it does have register routes. You know what? I'm not sure. Let's see, deals page. I would assume there would be some sort of, so basically you can hook up obviously to the click event of the thing itself. I'm not sure if it throws like a custom event, or not throws, it raises a custom event for when navigation occurs. I would assume so. And Nick, if he's watching this, is probably yelling at me right now.
Yeah. We use that type of hook into the navigation to detect if the user is logged in or if their login status has changed, like they've logged, like it's timed out.
Yeah, yeah. I'm assuming it's there somewhere. Like basically, and so all this, what I'm looking at right now is just is basically what you could do with the shell as well. But it is registering all these routes, so the route maps for all this stuff. So it does exist here. Where am I? I just had it. Deals tab. Oh boy. Anyway, it does exist here. Oh, here, sorry. So it does exist here as a route map. So there is probably something with the routing that will tell you, okay, we've resolved it and we're going to do this route navigation. Like I'm assuming. I should really check up on that though. But so the way, just for the login thing, I'd say, so this is more like down nitty gritty details right now, but for your route maps for login, say, this would be the things where you'd need to know, like, does the credential entity exist? So that's how they're logged in, and it can be a prerequisite to see these routes, right? You need to have your credentials existed. That's how they're doing it. I'm assuming you do have events that are hooked into the routing system, but I'll have to double check because I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm gonna write it down actually. Okay. I will get back to you. I'll post it on Twitter or something, and I'll talk to Nick. Yes, so that is just a quick preview of navigations, or more importantly, the XAML-based navigation. There's a lot more stuff going on that you can look at in that session. So, if this is all has to do with in your app host, right? This is all, not all of this. I just lost it all. Here, yeah. So basically, like your route mapping, this is all navigation logic stuff that you have to set up for your application. It can get very complex, right? So there's lots of customizabilities and flexibilities for navigation. But the big thing I wanted to show is just that XAML-based navigation, because it's pretty cool. The next one I wanted to talk about. So the next big one will reference, we'll cover what we were looking at there, the feed views sort of thing that was being toggled on and off as visibility. So basically, this is coming from the Uno reactive extensions. And so this is introducing the notion of a feed. So it's basically sort of like the Kotlin flows or reactive extensions, like the other reactive extensions, the not Uno one, and so we can easily package the various states that data can go through into a single dedicated interface of an I feed of T, right? And so it's enabling reactive, declarative, and immutable programming style for displaying your information from your view models, right? So if we were to look quickly at the reference application again. So if we were to look quickly at the reference application, we would have this products here. We would have this sort of products page, right? So obviously you have some sort of search term, and it'll filter this list of live data and do all of its fun state management stuff when you're setting a new filter or something changes in the list, the collection of the list, and all that fun stuff. So if we looked at the code for that, actually the products page first, yeah. So what we are looking at is this feed view. Okay, so basically that list of products that we were looking at on that products page that are filtered out by that search bar at the top. What we're looking at here, I don't want the visual states, go away. Okay, what we're looking at here is that data of all those list of items, or products, I should say, that is being fed to the feed view. And the feed view is that special toolkit control that exists that knows how to deal with those I feeds of T. So those feed objects, that's basically like live data or reactive extensions, sort of live data, right? And so within there, it has all this fun stuff. Here, I don't think it has everything. So yeah, so this is the just the main data template. So when data is loaded and it is here, it'll display it in this data template. The feed view also has different templates for when you're loading, when there's an error, when it's no data has been bound. So all the states of that the feed can be in, it's able to adapt and show the proper templates and all that stuff that you'd like to present to the user through the whole life cycle of the call to basically retrieve this data. So if we looked at the view model for this is where the little magic happens here. So basically what we're going to have here is we're going to have those items. Where is it? Oh, here, items. And so that's our iList feed. So it's a type of iFeed of those products, right? And we also have something that's called the filter, right? So that's what's going to be hooked up to when you start typing something in the search. That is what's going to kick off notifications to anyone subscribed to the filter object, which is an I state of the filter that you are writing. And you're able to combine those things like here. So you would have, you'd combine your filter with your results. Your results is this I feed here that actually performs the search for the products and adds them to these items, right? And so you can combine these things all to just be subscriptions to these sort of I states or I feeds or whatever you'd want, right? So I know it's a little confusing. But basically, the glue that connects these two together. So all you have to do is things like this. You have to define your list feeds. You have to define your feeds and your states and how they're combined and subscribed to each other. Then all the notify property change and all the other fun stuff is done for you by the code generator for Reactive, which generates this bindable products view model, right? So this is what actually takes, those filters, and it creates a bindable filter, and it does all this fun stuff with it. Same with the items. It's creating a bindable list feed. So it's all like inner stuff that you don't need to worry about, but it creates it all as something bindable that you can bind to right in your views from your view model. And so then it defines the backing properties and all that stuff for those things. So you don't have to worry too much about this. It's just a look behind the scenes of like how all that feed stuff and reactive data and observables and all that stuff, like how it actually connects into the view is through this little glue bindable view model, right? And so then it comes, and so basically then feed view will be able to subscribe to the different states that the items feed will be in, right? And if we were to look at the term, yes, so that I state, basically everything it's a bindable property, but then in this case, it's a state that you be able to toggle a change to. So people subscribing to that state or that I state will be able to reload its data or do whatever it needs to do with its data. And so that's what I'm trying to talk about here is, you have your feeds and everything that are coming from your models or your view models or whatever you'd want. And then this generated glue, the X part of it for MVUX is all the bindable stuff that's able to then, parse those reactive feeds of data and produce the right notifications or anything like that, right? Second last thing is what I was talking about before is the Uno toolkit, right? So this is a multi-platform first UI component library, and it's built to speed up your development for your applications, right? So it provides a set of higher level UI controls designed specifically for multi-platform responsive applications, right? So you have out of the box, these are those lookless controls. So those control templates, it offers like a basic how it should look, right? And then we have the material collection of control templates that will paint it in a material 3 or material 2 or even Cupertino style of look for the controls, right? And it is fully supported by the last thing we're going to talk about, which is the Uno Figma plugin. And so we'll just do a quick overview of this, but in Toolkit, there's a lot of stuff that are built for navigation, just because it's something that you have to deal with in every application. There's known patterns for how to deal with it. So these are things you can kind of just take out of Toolkit and drop into your app and get working without having to reinvent the wheel of, having a tab bar like Shell, right? Like, so same idea. So you have a bottom tab bar, you have a top tab bar, you have a navigation bar that can deal with all the things that are going on with navigation. And so these are pretty cool. So the navigation bar itself is a pretty tricky thing to do, especially when you're dealing with all the different types of patterns of doing a back navigation for different devices, like a desktop application versus a mobile application. But the navigation bar itself, if we were to look at it here, it would be using this navigation bar, right? You don't have to worry too much. See, I'm not actually declaring a back button or anything like that. So you can, if you want to style it in different ways, but by default, the navigation bar will be able to hook onto either the navigation extensions if it's in play, or things like if I'm inside of a frame, which is, the frame is what we'll navigate its content around. It'll be able to hook onto that and say, do I have anything in the back stack? Yes. Okay, display my back button. Or when it gets clicked, like properly run the back navigation, depending on which platform you're running on, it might be doing different things. So it's a little like tricky thing to work, but on iOS and Android, it's rendering out the actual native, the UI navigation bar or the Android toolbar, and we kind of just forward the properties onto it. So it's a fun little control. And the tab bar we saw before, it just does that lower level tab-based navigation stuff like you've seen before. Just out of the box, it works. The drawer is a fun one. So you can have those bottom sheets or things that slide in and out from whichever side you want, top, left, right, bottom. It's able to do it. And then auto layout is basically when we were saying it is a multi-platform first UI library. A lot of that comes from the introduction of this auto layout. So there's no hard coding, the lengths or hard coding the margins or whatever, all that stuff. It's all basically constraint layout stuff using auto layout. And so it's able to adapt different screen sizes, size changes, or anything like that. So that comes into really big play when we start talking about our Uno Figma plugin, which is next, right? So, and it's the final thing. So basically, we want to be able to go from these high fidelity like Figma designs. So Figma, sorry, if Figma itself is an application that's used for designing, but you can design anything, I guess, but like in this context, it's for designing your application screens, right? So like what the actual screen will look like on each page, and then usually you hand that off to the developer, and the developer makes it look like it does in the design as close as possible, right? That handoff is very difficult sometimes. And so what we wanted to do is to be able to go from those Figma designs to developer-friendly XAML, which can be built upon and extended further later on by the developer, right? So we want to be able to easily generate packages that are ready to be used in your projects. So using the Figma plugin, the Uno Figma plugin, I would say it would reduce up to 50% of the time start a project, 50% of the time to start up projects or new app screens, right? Because it gets you most of the way there, and then you can just tweak as you go. And so basically you're able to, like along with the plugin, you're able to export all your design assets and eliminate that handoff of hassle as well. So all your vector graphics or all your assets itself will come packaged for you to be placed in your Uno application. And so it also has the capabilities to deal with the material design styles that we have built into Uno themes, as well as the Uno toolkit components. So all Uno components obviously are supported, and then all those toolkit components that we looked at, like tab bar and navigation bar, those all have their place in Figma and are able to be generated, right? So I always forget there's animations here. So we are basically, what we're doing for this plugin is really cool. So we're going to have this component library that I was looking at before, that we were looking at for the mock-ups of that commerce app. We're going to have this live preview, which I haven't shown yet, which is super cool. And then these are all the things it's capable of sort of out of the box as extras if you want. Like if you want to have the generated XAML be localized or be given automation IDs or deals with the navigation extension, deals with the reactive extension, deals with if you're binding data from a data source. Those are all things that it's able to handle, and you can pre-configure that all you want, right? So if we wanted to, So if we wanted to look quickly, so basically everything I've been showing you, that commerce app, what we were looking at for the screens was actually the Figma file for that reference application, and all the code that we were looking at in the XAML was actually all generated through the plugin, and it wasn't written by anyone, right? So it was all done using the Figma plugin itself. So we can, okay. So again, this is Figma that we were looking at this whole time, and so obviously, you can move stuff around. It's just like a static little thing, right? It's not an actual application running. It's just what it should look like. If I were to click this and run the Uno platform plugin on that specific page within the layout, Wait, oh, I don't want dark mode. Duh. Okay. We could then, if we refresh the player, we could see that now we have that. I can't move this. There you go. We have that exact. Okay, this is getting me annoying. Can't see that. Whatever. Okay, we have that exact login page, but now it's an actual application. It's within an actual application and it's usable, right? So like, I don't know how well you can see, but no, zooming does not. Okay, so it's an actual application that we can run. These are actual like Uno text boxes. The buttons are here. You know, it has the nice ripple, whatever. That's an actual WebAssembly application of the XAML that you generated from that Figma page, right? So if you were to look, okay, I'm going to unzoom because it's bothering me. Oh boy. Okay, I can't unzoom. Reset. Okay. So if you look, this will be actually what is generated by that plugin and what you're seeing on the live previewer, right? So it's utilizing a lot of those auto layouts because otherwise, if you're doing it from a design file, you don't want to have to hard code like it's 50 pixels down and like whatever, you know. So to be able to have it be responsive and adaptive to whichever device form factor design is going to be used on, it's wrapped in these auto layouts, you know. And then you have, you know, the true controls that are existing within Uno itself, as well as, yeah, that's what you have. So if we wanted to look, you have those other capabilities. So say, oh, actually, if you wanted to, oh my God, I'm so upset by this thing. There you go. So if we're looking at here, right? So if we go back to the button, and within Figma, we can, whatever, put it back to some other color that we'd like. So we want it to be like this. Basically, as long as we refresh, the app should be regenerated using, you know, the new values from the Figma file. So it's a working application now. It's just, you know, it's just been regenerated. If we were to go to the settings for our plugin and we can say, I want localization. So I want any string or whatever that I have in my XAML, I want it to have some sort of localization ID that we can reference to a, you know, some sort of resw file or whatever, some sort of strings file that provides the proper language for whichever language the device is running in. So if I were to add that and I can refresh, if I were to export this XAML now, I'm going to put up Notepad, say, you will see, yes, so you will see things like my text block here has its text. There you go. Has its text set to, you know, something like log into your account, and that just would have been hard coded like before we did anything else. But now it generates based on the content, based on the type of control it is, it generates those unique IDs. So just small little things like that that are really cool. So there's a lot of capabilities that you can do within the plugin, which is super fun. As well as, you know, if you want to have a data backing store for your page to be able to display it in different ways, right? You can create like a JSON file here with all your data, and it will properly hook on to the to the bindings that are created, right? So you just name them the same as they would in your view model, and everything, all the bindings get generated for you as well, which is really, really cool too. Oh, wait. Oh no, wrong thing. There you go. So yeah, so that's our reference application basically. If you wanted to look at the whole component library itself, so this is everything from Figma that Uno has support for that you can use to generate, right? So if we look at things like this, you know, like all the radio button checkboxes, they have all their different states with and without labels, on press, blah, blah, blah. And that all comes pre-built, so you can drag and drop that onto your screen and it'll properly generate the XAML for this control itself, right? And so the same for everything else, you know, drop down boxes or combo boxes and check boxes and whatever, all the basics, and then the toolkit stuff on top of that, the toolkit controls as well. And then So what I mentioned before was, we're going to wrap up. So what I mentioned before was, Uno has been here for a long time. Just it's been used throughout the years for production applications for the studio that created it, right? So there are production ready apps. There are a ton of them that are running Uno right now in the wild, and some of the cool ones, or the recent ones, I guess, is one of them is called Trade Zero. So basically, it's like a stock trading application that you can use to track and buy stocks and all that fun stuff. They basically put their bet on Uno, right? Because they wanted to go across all platforms. They especially wanted to hit the mobile devices, and so it really came into play. So they have that toolkit tab bar, they have that toolkit navigation bar, and they have all these crazy things like all their graphs and stuff. That's all from either they did it themselves, or sorry, they have their own controls, or it could be coming from different third-party vendors that do charts. So it's a really rich application. That's really, really cool. One of the other cool ones was the NuGet Package Explorer, right? So I don't know if anyone's familiar. There is a WPF application, I think it's written in, to basically explore your NuGet packages. So it'll download the NuGet package, open it up, and you can look at the contents and all that fun stuff, right? And so that's been ported over to the Uno NuGet Package Explorer WebAssembly application. So if you actually go to NuGet.org and you looked up whatever, Uno, if I open this package, or I go to the package thing, we now have this open in NuGet Package Explorer on the official NuGet page, right? So we can open this, and this is an Uno application that was that was built and is running natively in the browser now through WebAssembly. And it's just going to do its thing. It'll act the same way the WPF application acted, right? So it downloads it, and then it just provides you, anything you want to look at and play with, or whatever, and all the information about the DLL. It's a really, really cool thing, and it was really fun. So it's just one of those things that was easily portable to the web, just because it was already targeting, somewhat of the Windows APIs for building your UI, right? Those are really, really fun. And then I have a few other use cases if we want to talk about those, but I don't want to spend so much time on a whole bunch of different apps. But I know that was a lot. I always tell myself I got to cut this down, but I want to mention everything so it goes quickly. So yeah, if there's any questions, if you want to get started on anything, if looking for documentation or help or whatever, first place to go is platform.uno. That's where all our docs are. That's where all the info is. If you want to connect with us, if you're having issues or ideas or whatever, our official place for discussions is either GitHub or Discord, right? So we do have a Discord channel that's there, as well as GitHub. We're very open to send us issues if you have problems, open up discussions. So the GitHub discussions, if you want to talk about something, that'll be a very good source of truth for questions that people are looking for, and there's lots to do. So yeah, that would be the main way to sort of interact with Uno and get started. And I hope that was helpful. I know it went super fast, but yeah, I am happy to answer any questions or whatever. But yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me and letting me talk about Uno.
I have a quick question. Does Uno have support for maps?
It's coming. So it's coming. I promise.
I ask that every year.
Yeah. I don't know all the details. I have heard it being talked about. I don't know where it's at right now, because there is technically a maps one, but I believe it's very out of date. So there's something we gotta bring it forward. But yeah, that would be something that's good to bring up on, start a discussion about maps or something for Uno on GitHub or something like that. But it is not forgotten. It's just I don't know where it's lying right now in the priorities.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions for Steve, please unmute yourself and ask away.
I had a quick question about the Visual Studio Code plugin.
Yeah.
It looks like it's, I'm just looking at the website, it looks like it's only for WebAssembly and Mac, Windows.
Yeah.
All right, so you can't do mobile, that one.
No, you can't do mobile at this point. No, you cannot. I don't think. We have with the Net 6, iOS Net 6, whatever, mobile. It's being worked on. I don't know how it all works, but it's coming. But right now, yeah, it would be like for Net Center 2 heads, like the Skia GTK or WebAssembly that you can use with VS Code for now. Yeah.
Nice.
With the Figma plugin, is it two-way? I know you can edit the Figma controls and it'll generate the XAML. If you manually tweak the XAML, would it be reflected back in the Figma drawing?
Oh, no. Yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, the XAML previewer that I showed there, it's like read only. Yeah, that would be interesting actually.
And a lot of work.
Yeah. And there is, I don't know, like Figma is a very big one that people are using. I know there are other design tools out there. If they support, like web-based plugins, we could probably get it working in there too, but I don't know what the plans are to reach out for more design tools, but that would be cool to look at too.
Yeah, Figma seems to be pretty popular. Our company has like license, any developer who needs it can get a license for it.
Yeah. Good stuff. Anything else?
Anyone else?
This is good, thank you. It's a great overview.
Cool.
Yeah. I've been told it's I've been told it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. So I keep telling myself I'm gonna cut it down so I don't have to rush, and then like no, I have to say everything. Yeah.
You said you had some more reference apps to show, or I mean, just point us to at least.
Oh, right. So yeah, so there is, maybe I could put it in the chat. There is the Uno samples GitHub repo. There you go. So right now, the big reference app that we're trying to use the most is the one in the reference folder, which for right now there is the commerce app that I talked about. If you were to go to extensions, so in the Uno extensions, which is like what's heavily being used for reference in that application, the Uno extensions repo itself does have a playground sample application built into the solution, which you can use that as well to look at how navigation or reactive or whatever is done. But yeah, the commerce is and will continue to be like the source of truth reference application. And as we add more things, we will update that commerce app mostly as our #1 thing to show.
Nice, that's useful. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's really great. Cool.
All right. Unless anyone has any other questions, I think we're done for tonight. Thank you again, Steve. This was really cool.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.